What a huge audience. Isn't this nice? Are you coming to join us up the front, Frank? Oh, good. Okay, so this is this is a Celtic, was it last week or the week before?
Last week.
Last week. And so it was an hour and a half, so we're going to try and get an hour and a half into 15 minutes. So I'm going to rush through the first few slides because I think it's pretty obvious that TAs are a very important resource to us and to the college and to the kids, but it's really important that we need to use them in a targeted way so that it can really help learning. I think you're actually up first.
Yeah, we won't do the QR
We won't do that one? Okay.
So, firstly, it's important to develop a good working relationship with the TAs or the paraprofessionals in your room. So, do you get the opportunity to speak to them? Do you know the names of them? And we've got a quick activity for that in a minute. And do you invite students to greet the TAs in the room when they arrive? Sometimes you don't have the opportunity for that because they arrive a little bit late and you've already started the lesson, but at least acknowledging them in the room. So next slide, quick activity. I'll give you just a second to have a look at these faces, and then I'm going to ask for a show of hands if you can tell me who those people are.
Can you name every single person on this?
All of those people.
You're out, Frank. You're not.
Maybe you can name Irene.
I haven't told him yet.
So, does anybody think they can name all people in that slide? No.
Mr. Italiano, would you like to give it a go?
Ingrid, Elise, Sharon,
no, so that's Karina.
Jenny, Karina O'Leary, sorry.
Yeah.
Denise, Michelle, Jane, Tayfew, Ingrid, Louise, Shireen, which is our newest learning assistant, Cheryl, Nikki, and Jackie Johnson.
Well
Don't
done.
you know that?
Jenny and Sharon. So these are actually in two distinct groups. This group here are our teacher assistants, so working with ed support students. These four are learning assistants, so they're working primarily with 7s, 8s and 9s, supporting kids in mainstream classes. So some of you teaching mainstream lower school are going to come across these guys more, but if you have ed support kids in your class, then you'll come across these guys. We will share this in teams with their names so that people have an opportunity to get to know who they are. Just quickly. Oh no, we'll just the learning assistants don't have a uniform, but teacher assistants do.
Oh, I'll go back.
Yeah.
So if you can see probably Denise or Michelle, so they've got the blue shirt and it's got the Corpus Christi logo and staff written on it, but these guys don't have the same uniform.
Communication. Don't assume that your TAs know what you want them to do. So they are still under the direction of you as the teacher. They're obviously there supporting students with identified needs, but you're the teacher, it's up to you. So please communicate your lesson intentions. If your lessons are clear and visible on sector, they can access that. If you don't have the opportunity to catch them at the end of a lesson or before a lesson, you can email them. We have an ed support email group, so if it's something that's relevant for everybody, feel free to get on the 8070 ed support group and email all of us. They have an iTunes U log that they log on information about students so that they can share in-house because not the same teacher assistant or learning assistant can go to the same class every time, and it's just the way timetabling works. So we have a form of communication in-house. They will also often use sector to input medical information in knowing our students. If someone has a seizure, for example, they will jump on so that that's logged in sector, and will often notify parents because particular students need that medical information to be reporting back to neurologists.
Another
doctors.
thing that the Jackie, Shireen, so the learning assistants do, if they give kids extra time, or if they're helping scribe for a student in a class, or they're doing some support with an assessment, we log that into sector as well, because that gives us a record of how much adjustments that child is using. So when they get to year 10, 11 and 12 and they're requesting extra time or reader support because of their disability, or they're requesting a scribe, we can say, well, in year 7, 8 and 9, you didn't use these things, or you did use these things. So we've got evidence that this has helped you throughout the middle school years, so therefore we're going to keep them going. So that's why they'll put on there extra time used for humanities assessment. Or they might say, can you guys make sure to do that as well? Because that just gives us a really good snapshot of what the kids use and need.
Okay, next one. Effectively, this is saying that often the teacher assistants or learning assistants in the room know your students perhaps better than you do, but it's really important that you interact in a sense that you have the opportunity to get to know those students as well as they do. We had a good example of Frank last year working with Miko and Juliet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Miko and Juliet, now year 8s, but when there was an assessment, Frank went outside and worked with Miko and Juliet and left the teacher assistant to supervise the rest of the kids in the room. So you can always switch that role if it's an activity that allows you to do that, so that you have the opportunity to get to know those students and use your teacher assistant supervising others.
Okay. So that was sort of the next part. So it gives you that opportunity to work with those kids that you often might not, because you're working with the whole class if you target those, if you use the TA in that way. So TAs can support in offering suggestions but for modifications, but they're not there to do it for you, because at the end of the day it's the responsibility of the teacher to program for the teaching and learning of all students in the classroom. So that's where knowing our students, what their needs are, their abilities, talking to the case managers can help. Often the TAs do know the kids really, really well and can make really useful suggestions. TAs aren't there for students who are badly behaved. Sometimes I get requests for a TA for a class, and really it's just a class of year 9 boys acting like year 9 boys. They're just disengaged and it's a behaviour thing. Another one that we sometimes get is monitoring what's actually happening between the interaction between the teacher assistant and the student, because we don't want the TAs to do all the work for the kids. They're there to support the students in getting the work done, so they might need to step back a bit and just observe the student getting the work done. So, and that can happen from time to time. Okay.
Feedback, so yeah, we'll get to that one as well.
Yeah.
Teacher assistants are the same as everybody and benefit from feedback. So often, again, at the end of the lesson there might not be time, but try and catch them, arrange a time later in the day or later in the week if you need to. Give them details, remain positive, but they're going to learn from that feedback that you can provide them. Please make sure it's constructive.
Okay. So just to give everyone a bit of an understanding of allocation of TAs, we don't have a slide for this one. We have 14 people for approximately 50 students who are on the funding list. We have 2 students who are in intensive support needs, so that means they're one-to-one. We have 260 students who are on our national NCCD, so our collection of consistent data about students with disabilities and that we think have disabilities. So we have not many people to cover a lot of students who have a lot of needs. I think in the centre we've got 27 students coming that are just based from the Ed Support Centre. So that just gives everyone a bit of a snapshot of
I do
numbers.
a daily timetable to allocate those staff to students because it changes daily. So I'm a bit like a Sally on a very small scale, trying to make sure that all of those students are catered for each day. So, haven't got handouts for everybody, but there is a little copy of what we gave out at the Celtic. Have you run off more, or Amanda will show you where they are.
This is all on Teams, so if you in Teams, if you go into into the all staff, there is a learning support channel, and in the, that channel under files, I'll keep clicking, information for all staff, and there is a wealth of, so that's that document there. But then we also have, just for knowing, a wealth of information about specific disabilities and disorders. So really good handouts, a lot from Dyslexia Spelled, with just, you know, some good ideas for use in the classroom. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.